I didn't mean to destroy my marriage at my first gallery opening, but that's exactly what I did. Standing there among my paintings, champagne glass in hand, I looked at my husband of 3 years and called him the anchor dragging me down. The worst part, I actually believed it in that moment. I'm Alexandra Cooper. Alex to everyone except my mother and the man I married. 28 years old, and so certain I knew everything about art, life, and what was holding me back. Nathan was late to the opening, 45 minutes late, to be exact. He'd texted about a software emergency at work, something about servers crashing and clients panicking. 3 years ago, I would have understood. That night, I just added it to my mental list of ways he was failing my dreams. "I'm so sorry," he said when he finally arrived, still wearing his work clothes, his dark hair slightly messy, like he'd been running his hands through it, his stress tell. Did I miss anything important? I remember taking a slow sip of champagne, feeling the bubbles burn my throat. Chris, the gallery owner, had been hovering nearby all evening, telling me how underappreciated my work had been, how I deserved more recognition. His words were still ringing in my ears when I turned to my husband. "Just the entire opening of your wife's first gallery showing," I said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "But why should tonight be any different? You've been missing everything else about my art career." Nathan's face did this thing, this subtle shift I'd seen before but never really understood. A tightening around the eyes, a slight downturn of his mouth. Not anger, something worse. Disappointment. "Alex," he said quietly, reaching for my hand. "Can we talk about this privately?" "Why?" The champagne had made me bold. Or maybe it was Chris's presence behind me, his silent approval radiating like heat. "Are you embarrassed that your wife finally has something to say? That she's not just sitting at home supporting your career anymore?" Maya, my best friend since college, appeared at my elbow. "Alex, honey, maybe this isn't the best time." But I was on a roll. 3 years of perceived slights, of feeling secondary to his success, came pouring out. "You know what? I'm tired of dimming my light to make you comfortable. You're holding me back, Nathan. You have been for years." The gallery went quiet. That's what I remember most, the sudden, suffocating silence. Nathan stood there, keys still in hand, looking at me like he was seeing a stranger. When he finally spoke, his voice was so soft I had to lean in to hear him. "I've never asked you to dim anything, Alex. I've only ever wanted to see you shine." He turned and walked out. No drama, no shouting, no scene. Just quiet footsteps and the gentle click of the gallery door. I told myself his reaction proved everything I'd been feeling, that he couldn't handle my success, my independence. I was so convinced I was right, I didn't see what I was destroying. Maya grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in. "What the hell was that?" "The truth," I said, but my voice wavered. Chris stepped forward, his hand finding the small of my back. "That was brave," he said. "It's time someone acknowledged your true potential." I smiled at him, ignoring the sick feeling in my stomach. This was what I wanted, wasn't it? To be seen, to be validated. Then why did victory taste so much like ash? The next 3 weeks became an exercise in self-justification. Nathan moved into the guest room without discussion, his presence in our house becoming ghost-like, there but barely tangible. I threw myself into gallery work, telling myself this was what pursuing my dreams looked like. This was the price of artistic integrity. Every morning, I'd find a fresh cup of coffee waiting in the kitchen, still hot. Nathan would be gone, but that cup remained. A small gesture that I deliberately misread as passive-aggressive rather than what it really was. A stubborn act of care from a man I was determined to cast as my antagonist. "He's trying, Alex," Maya said one afternoon over lunch. She'd been watching me check my phone, where Chris's texts kept lighting up the screen. "Have you even noticed?" "Trying to make me feel guilty, maybe," I replied, typing out a response to Chris about staying late at the gallery again. "Did you know he actually suggested I scale back my gallery hours? Like I'm some hobby artist who can just pick this up whenever it's convenient for him." Maya set down her fork. "Is that what he actually said?" "He said he misses me." I rolled my eyes, ignoring the tiny voice in my head that whispered this wasn't fair. "That we never talk anymore. Classic manipulation." "Right," Maya said slowly. "Your husband of 3 years telling you he misses you is manipulation. Not, a normal human response to his wife suddenly acting like he's the enemy. I changed the subject, but Maya's words followed me to the gallery that evening. Chris was waiting, as he always was lately, with a glass of wine and compliments that felt increasingly necessary to my survival. "You're different," he told me, standing closer than strictly professional, special. Some people just can't handle that kind of light. I drank in his words like the wine, letting them blur the edges of my guilt. When my phone buzzed with Nathan's text, "Made your favorite pasta, we'll leave a plate in the microwave," I turned it face down. The gallery became my refuge, my excuse, my justification. I stayed later each night, lost in conversations with Chris about art and potential and all the ways the world had tried to contain us. If I noticed how these conversations always circled back to my marriage, how Chris's sympathetic nods felt rehearsed, I pushed those thoughts aside. Then came the night of the charity showcase. I was hanging my newest piece, a dark, abstract work I'd titled Constraints, when Nathan showed up unannounced. He was carrying takeout from our favorite Thai place, the one we discovered on our third date. "Thought you might be hungry," he said, holding up the bag. "You haven't been home for dinner all week." Before I could respond, Chris emerged from his office. "Alex, darling, about the placement of your piece," he stopped, taking in the scene. "Oh, I didn't realize you had company." The way he said it, like Nathan was an intruder rather than my husband, should have set off alarms. Instead, I felt a twisted sort of validation. "We were just about to discuss the showcase layout," I said, not meeting Nathan's eyes. "Maybe another time?" Nathan looked between us, at the takeout bag in his hand, at the wine glasses on Chris's desk. Something in his face shifted, settled. Without a word, he set the bag down and left. "He doesn't understand your world," Chris said softly, moving closer. "Not like I do." That's when he kissed me, and for one horrible moment, I let him. The kiss lasted seconds, but it shattered everything. I pushed Chris away, but the damage was done. I saw Nathan standing in the doorway, takeout bag dropped at his feet. The look on his face wasn't anger or even surprise. It was recognition, like the final piece of a puzzle he hadn't wanted to complete had fallen into place. "Nathan," I started, but he held up his hand. "Don't," he said quietly. "Just don't." He turned and walked away, leaving the spilled food on the gallery floor. This time, when the door clicked shut, it sounded like an ending. Chris tried to touch my arm. "Alex, this is for the best. You and I." "Get out," I whispered. Then louder. "Get out." "Don't be dramatic," he scoffed. "We both know your marriage was over anyway. I just helped you see it." That's when Maya's words came rushing back, along with every warning sign I'd ignored. Chris hadn't been supporting my art. He'd been systematically undermining my marriage. And I'd let him because it was easier than admitting my own insecurities. I drove home in a daze, rehearsing explanations that felt hollow even in my head. But Nathan wasn't there. His car was gone, and so was his laptop bag, the one he always kept packed for emergency business trips. On the kitchen counter sat a note. "I need time to think. Don't wait up." Maya answered on the first ring. "He saw us," I blurted out. Chris kissed me, and Nathan saw. The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought we'd lost connection. "Maya, what did you expect?" Her voice was tired. "You've been pushing him away for months, Alex. Staying late at the gallery, dismissing his attempts to connect, practically flaunting your relationship with Chris. Did you think Nathan was blind?" "It wasn't like that," I protested weakly. "Really? Because from where I'm standing, you took a man who supported your art even when you doubted yourself, who worked extra hours to help pay for your supplies, who turned our spare room into a studio for you, and you treated him like he was your biggest obstacle." Each word hit like a physical blow. Memories flooded back. Nathan surprising me with professional-grade easels for my birthday, sitting through countless art shows at tiny cafes, never complaining when paint fumes filled our house. How had I twisted that support into constraint? "I didn't mean to," I started. "That's the problem, Alex. You never mean to. You just do what you want and expect everyone else to adjust to your reality." Nathan came home 3 days later to pack a bag. I was sitting in our kitchen, my untouched coffee cold, his morning cup habit finally broken. He looked tired, older somehow, like the past few months had aged him years. "I signed a 6-month lease," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Near the office." 6 months? My voice cracked. Nathan, please, we can fix this. The thing with Chris wasn't about Chris. He started gathering his things, methodical as always. You know that, Alex. This was about us. About how easily you believed I was the villain in your story. I was wrong, I whispered. I see that now. He paused, hand on the frame of the painting he'd bought me for our first anniversary. That's the thing. You only see it because everything fell apart, not because you actually listened when I tried to tell you. He was right. Every attempt he'd made to talk, I'd dismissed as controlling. Every concern, I'd twisted into criticism. I'd been so focused on proving I didn't need him, I'd forgotten I wanted him. The divorce papers came 2 weeks later. Nathan had checked irreconcilable differences, a kindness I didn't deserve. My art career was taking off, ironically. The gallery scandal had created buzz, and my paintings were selling. Chris had spun some story about artistic passion and creative spirits, making himself the hero. I let him keep the gallery showing, but I pulled my permanent collection. Maya stuck around, though our friendship changed. You need to work on yourself, she said one evening, watching me pick at my dinner. Really work, Alex. Not just say you're sorry and expect everything to go back to normal. I started therapy. Learned about self-sabotage and projection. Discovered that my fear of being held back was really fear of not being enough. Nathan had never been my constraint. My own insecurities were. 6 months turned into a year. I saw Nathan at a coffee shop once, laughing with a woman I didn't know. He looked happy, unburdened. The sight hurt, but not in the way I expected. It hurt because I finally understood what I'd thrown away. My paintings changed. Less angry, more introspective. I found a small studio across town, away from the gallery scene. Started teaching art to kids on weekends. Slowly, I learned to measure success not by recognition, but by fulfillment. You're growing, Maya said recently, helping me hang pieces for a small showing. Finally. Too late though, isn't it? She shrugged. For your marriage? Yes. But maybe that's not the point. Maybe the point is making sure your next relationship doesn't end the same way. I look at my latest piece sometimes, a simple study of 2 coffee cups, one full, one empty. Nathan would have understood its meaning. That's the thing about destroying something precious. You don't realize its value until you're left holding the pieces, finally understanding that some breaks can't be fixed. They can only be learned from. Nathan sent me an email last week. He's getting married again. He wanted me to hear it from him rather than through mutual friends. It was kind, professional, distant. Everything we aren't anymore. I wrote back congratulating him, and I meant it. He deserves happiness. More importantly, he deserves someone who sees his support as a gift, not a cage. As for me, I'm learning to live with my choices, to accept that sometimes we're not the heroes of our stories. Sometimes we're the cautionary tale, the one who had everything and mistook it for nothing, the one who fought against constraints that existed only in her mind. My new show opens next month. It's called Reflections, a series about perception versus reality. Maya says it's my best work yet. This time, though, I'm not looking for validation. I'm just trying to tell the truth. Even when, especially when, that truth is about myself. The truth about endings is that they rarely feel like endings when you're in them. They feel like mistakes you can still fix, like words you can take back, like wrong turns you can somehow correct if you just try hard enough. But some endings are permanent, and the only thing you can do is learn to carry them with grace. I saw Nathan yesterday. He was helping his fiancée move into their new house, the kind of suburban dream home we used to talk about. I drove past slowly, not stalking, just remembering. He looked up, caught my eye. For a moment, we just looked at each other through my car window. Then he nodded, a small gesture of acknowledgement, and turned back to his new life. A life I'm no longer part of. Maya tells me this is growth, being able to see him happy without falling apart. You're not the same person who blew up her life at that gallery, she said over coffee this morning. That counts for something. She's right. But it's a bittersweet victory. I'm proud of who I'm becoming. But I wish I'd become her without leaving so much damage in my wake. The irony isn't lost on me that I finally learned to appreciate support and partnership by losing both. My art students ask me sometimes about inspiration, about following their dreams. I tell them something I wish I'd understood sooner. True support doesn't hold you back. It gives you a foundation to build from. I tell them that the loudest voice isn't always the wisest, and that sometimes the people who push you toward the spotlight are pushing you away from what matters. The coffee cups painting hangs in my bedroom now. Every morning it reminds me that love isn't about grand gestures or dramatic statements. It's about the quiet moments, the daily choices, the simple act of making someone's morning better, even when they've stopped seeing you. I'm dating again, slowly and carefully. I'm upfront about my past, about my mistakes. I'm a work in progress, I tell them, and for the first time, that feels like enough. No need to be special, to be different, to be more than I am. Nathan's wedding invitation arrived today. A courtesy, Maya says, not an expectation. I won't go. Some boundaries are better left uncrossed. But I'll send a gift, a small painting of two paths diverging in a sunlit forest. He'll understand its meaning, just like he always understood me, even when I didn't understand myself. This isn't a story about redemption or second chances. It's simpler and harder than that. It's about learning to live with your worst choices, about accepting that sometimes you're not the hero of your story, sometimes you're the lesson someone else needed to learn. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's growth too. I still make coffee for two sometimes, out of habit. The second cup sits there getting cold, like a small monument to what I lost. But I'm learning to make just one cup, to embrace the quiet of my smaller life, to find beauty in starting over. Because that's the thing about destroying something precious. You don't just learn what you lost, you learn who you are in the aftermath. And if you're lucky, if you're really paying attention, you learn how to be someone who won't make the same mistakes again. That has to be enough.